I don't think it's any wonder why Steve loves my family so much, especially my wife, because she just promoted me to the oldest. And I'm the second oldest. I know that I look older, but he's really made an impact on her. It is 794 miles from Kitchener, Ontario to Asheville, North Carolina. That's the distance my dad traveled to meet the love of his life, my mom. He was between his sophomore and junior year at the University of Toronto studying engineering physics. And his father was a tool and die maker who moved to Chicago to try to find work. It was much easier to find in Chicago than it was in the villages of Canada. And so between his sophomore and junior year, Dad moved down to Chicago to try to find work himself. And it was easier if you had citizenship. So Dad got citizenship, he got a job, and he got drafted into the U.S. Army in about a 3-week period. And so he was stationed in Fort Bragg in Fayetteville, which is where my oldest brother Steve, and I'll keep saying oldest brother Steve until you all get that, was born. But it was during that time that he was in 82nd Airborne, and they would do paratrooper training in the mountains of Asheville. So they would take them off, drop them, and then they'd have a few days to get to an excision point. And that's where he met my mom. And as both Susie and Steve have said, Mom would tell you that she was the luckiest person and could have never found a better husband or father for her children. If my dad were here, he would tell you he was the lucky one to have found her. And I think they both are right. They set a model for all of us that was absolutely stunning. And they loved each other exclusively for 57 years. And really were the role models for my brothers and sister. The thing that I remember the most about my dad, and one of the things that really carried through his entire life, was how he related to other people. And it really didn't matter if he was talking to one of the most brilliant engineers I've ever met, my stepfather-in-law, Nate Markle. And they were talking about Stirling engines or the latest physics developments. Or whether he was learning how to trout fish in a rusty old boat floating down a river with a man named Birdseed. My family asked the question, well, I'll tell you about Birdseed. But he related to everyone, and he saw something in everyone that he met and everyone that he talked to. And if you never met my dad, it means you never pulled into a 7-Eleven or a Hardee's or a McDonald's and lifted the hood on your car and took a peek under it. Because if that ever happened, he was coming. I'm getting in on this. I don't think there was an internal combustion engine that he could not fix. And he loved doing it and loved working with others. My good friend Chuck Munn had a beautiful black Camaro when we were in high school. And Dad used to work on that thing, tune it up. Billy Zahn had a wonderful car. These guys had great cars. I drove, you'll see it in the pictures here, a 1970 Oldsmobile that really was not the fastest or the prettiest car, but it was the one that my folks had passed down. So he related to people on such an amazing level. And when my brother Steve was born, my dad related to him in a way that was absolutely amazing. If you ever saw my father work on something, he was so strong structurally. He was so good at getting an engine running. But if you ever saw his trim carpentry, you'll know his best friend was a tube of caulk, because he was not a strong carpenter. But what he saw in Steve was someone who was an absolutely fantastic carpenter. And Steve took time and built some of the most beautiful homes that my dad took such pride in seeing. And he did that with so many of us. When Roger and I were growing up, if you look at the pictures that were flashed up here earlier, Roger and I both had poor eyesight, and we wore glasses that can probably be best described as welding goggles, because we would break them every single time he would get a new pair. And so I'm out with a buddy one day, and I had a new pair of glasses on, and they were the welding glasses. And we're going to do something called learn to throw a rock left-handed. And so, we're throwing like this, and I'm standing about where Steve is over here, and he throws it like this, and hits me right in the eye, and shattered my glasses. So Dad said, no worries, we'll get a new lens, we'll put it in there. The day that I got the glasses back, I'm playing in the backyard of our house over on Belmont Drive. And there's a swing back there, and I'm swinging on this chain, and all of a sudden the chain breaks free, and I look up, and there's about a 1-pound U-bolt that falls straight down and hits me right between the eyes. And it didn't hurt. It didn't cut me. It just hit right there, and my glasses broke and fell apart. Dad said, no worries, I'll fix this. And so he would put epoxy on the glasses. He would put them in the oven on a piece of newspaper for the epoxy to dry, and then he would file it down so that it fit over the bridge of my nose. What he wasn't able to file away was the newspaper that stuck back to school. And so I wore these until I probably broke that pair. But he always made us feel special. And he always made us feel like if there was anything that we were interested in, he wanted to support us. And he saw in us things that he didn't see in himself. And he celebrated that. He loved watching my younger brother Roger play soccer. And as much as Steve and I don't like to admit it, Roger was by far the best soccer player of the three of us. And he loved going out and watching him play, just like he did his grandkids. And he saw in Roger skills and abilities that he himself didn't have. And so as accomplished as he was, he always saw the best in others. He always enjoyed working with people, regardless of educational achievement, where they were in their life. He genuinely cared about people. And we've joked around a lot about when our sister was born, when Peggy was born. If she had been the second, I don't think Roger and I would be here right now. Because Dad would have tried and tried and tried until he got the precious daughter in my sister Peggy. And she was the apple of his eye. And he was so proud of the mom that she became to Sydney and to Brad, and loved being with her and her family in an incredible, incredible way. Dad also treated all of his grandkids like they were the treasures of his life. And it's interesting, Lauren was the oldest grandchild and was an incredible soccer player. And he would travel all over North Carolina, Virginia, down to South Carolina. He would always travel to watch her play. He would follow my daughters, who were in cheerleading, to wherever their competitions were. So they'd be in Myrtle Beach, they'd be in Virginia, we would be in Maryland. He and Mom were always there for us. And I remember sitting next to Dad, watching a cheerleading competition, and I said, Dad, you never really traveled to watch me play soccer or Little League baseball, but you traveled and watched the grandkids play. And he said, Stuart, you really weren't that good. He said, there were a dozen kids in your neighborhood who could beat you. I had to go to Virginia and watch a kid in another neighborhood beat you. And I said, well, that's fair enough. I accept that. So he had just a wicked sense of humor, and he was exactly right. He was the most supportive father. most supportive husband, most supportive friend. When I look out and see all the faces here of the people that he was such dear friends with, from the lake, as Steve mentioned, from all of his time at IBM, the friendships he made and the things that he forged were really lifelong bonds. And it always, to me, came back to him seeing in other people something that he didn't see in himself and wanting to foster that. And I think that's why he was able to reach birdseed at the same level. He was able to reach my boss, Oliver Schattenberger, who is a brilliant scientist. He could talk to anyone, he could find commonality. He and my mother-in-law, Bonnie, would have some really good political discussions, and they couldn't have been further apart, but they truly enjoyed those conversations. Now, when she talked about Kentucky bourbon, and he talked about Canadian whiskey, it wasn't always as bright as the political discussions. But that's the guy that he was, is he always found something in others that he celebrated and truly enjoyed. And it was a blessing for all of us. My father is the finest man I will ever know. Not because he saw and celebrated the spark in others. My father was the greatest man I will ever know because he saw and celebrated the spark in others and never acknowledged that that spark was him.